Welcome back everybody to episode 14 of our programming series. We're going to be talking about what are known as macros. So a macro is just a global, constant, variable, or function. So it's global, meaning wherever you define it, you can use it wherever in that file. And then it's constant, so it's not going to change, and it can be a variable or a function. So we're going to view this with an example program. So here I have my main function in my main.cpp, and this program is just going to calculate the circumference and area of a circle given the radius. So I'm using namespace standard, that's not important, and I'm including this functions.h header file that I already wrote. So it just has two functions here, circumference and area, both passing in the radius parameter. And you can see here, we talked about the include preprocessor directive in the last video, but I didn't mention how when you actually write out the file yourself, you have to put it in double quotes. But if you are pulling the, if you're including like a library, you have to put it in angular brackets. Like that. So IOStream, you'd put in angular brackets. Anyways, let's get on with it. So we are going to define these two functions. So the formula for circumference of a circle is 2 pi r, and the area formula is pi squared. So we need, in both functions, we need a pi and we need r, and we already have r. So let's create a constant global variable, and that's a macro. So we're going to use this preprocessor directive, #define or #define, and we're going to give it a name pi, and then we're just going to set the value without the equal sign, which is something weird that I find that weird, but it's how it works. So anyways, we're going to return, let's see, 2 pi r. So 2 times pi times r, and then for the area it's pi squared, so return pi times, and then parentheses, because r times r is r squared. And there you go. Now we can go ahead and save this and call it in our main. So we'll go ahead and print out to the screen the result of the circumference of the radius 2, and then we'll go ahead and also end that line and end that line. So cout, we're going to do the area of like 5 or 6. Okay, there we go. Now we'll save those files, and we'll go over to the command prompt, and we'll go over to the directory. You can see we have our 3 source files, and I'll throw that in there, and you can see there they are. Now we're going to use the mingw compiler to compile this. So first off, we're going to compile the source code, and the source code is only in the CPP files. So we have all of the stuff that's actually going to happen in our CPP files, and the function, the header files, the header file only has the reference to the actual code that's going to be executed. So we only need to compile the CPP files. I don't think I've ever compiled a header file, and I don't think you can even do that. So anyway, here in the command prompt, we're going to use the mingw compiler. So we're going to do g++ -c for compile, and then the name of the file, so main.cpp and functions.cpp, and run that, and hopefully it gave us both objects files, and it did. So we have 1, 2. Now we can use those and link them together in an executable. So we use the -o for object, and then we pass in the object files, so main.o and functions.o, and we need to give this executable a name, so run me.exe. There we go, and this should compile, and there you go, and there you go. Awesome. So that worked. Now we're going to look at the function macro. So let me close this and close that. So you can see here in our function CPP, I defined a variable called pi as a macro using the define preprocessor directive. Now let's actually define a function. So I'm going to actually just ignore these files and get rid of this include. So now those files aren't included. We're going to still use IOStream, so that's good, but we're going to actually use these same functions, but we're going to define them as a macro. So #define our preprocessor directive there, and then we're going to give this the name of circumference. There we go. And then I'm going to pass in a parameter of r, and we don't need to give it a type in macros. We just pass in the name of it, and then we put what's actually going to happen in parentheses. So we're going to return 2 times pi, so we actually need another macro here, the same one we had. So define pi 3.14, and now we can use that in this macro. So pi and then times r. Now we don't, for macros, you can see here, you don't ever end it with a semicolon, so we just leave it open. And we're going to define another macro function called area. and this is going to take r as well, and we're going to define this as let's see, what is it, pi r squared? Yep. So pi times r, and notice those nested parentheses there. Very sophisticated. So let's go ahead and run this. So we need to recompile it, so we go there, and that works, and then we're going to go there, and hopefully this gives me something good. Exe, there you go. So that's two different ways of using macros. Hope you enjoyed. Catch you later.